Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What do you swear you saw but don't have any proof of? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Maybe 2 years ago, I was driving home, typical creepy dirt road situation, and I saw a group of kids walking not too far ahead of me. As I got closer, literally saw the dirt flicking with each step. I blinked and they were gone. Luckily, I wasn't horror movie stupid enough to stop the car and get out calling to them. Nope. I locked those doors and sped the F out of the area. Ogopogo, British Columbia's version of Loch Ness Monster. Family road trip back in '82. My dad parks the car by the official Ogopogo landmark sign, taking a pic of me and my sis in front of it. He orders us back to the car, but I can't resist taking a look at the lake below. Down in the lake are two big humps poking out of the water, drifting north across the lake. I try to get my family to come look, but Dad's yelling to get back in the car. My mom stealing money from my grandma's bag when I was young. Don't remember how much or the context of the situation, but I remember her quietly reaching into a black bag and taking out some $20 bills because they're distinctly green in Canada, unlike our other bills. She was looking all suspicious, and it didn't look right. Could have been something entirely different, but it seems sketchy in my hazy child memory. I was 17, driving home from my boyfriend's house around midnight. The road was dark with no lights except my car lights, and I couldn't see very far ahead. As I'm driving, going about 40 miles per hour, I suddenly see a white girl about my age with dark brown hair appear in the dark, standing in the middle of my lane, and I'm about 25 to 50 feet away from her. Instead of jumping out of the way, she puts her hands up in front of her face like she's bracing herself, waiting for me to hit her. I saw her just in time and was able to swerve and miss her, but as I look back, she's still just standing in the road. I was too shaken up to stop and see what the F was her problem, but I'll never forget that night. Back when Walmart was 24 hours, I was there around 2 a.m. While I was walking out the door, a dude walks in at a brisk pace holding a big machete up in his right hand. He stopped briefly and we glanced at each other, and then he kept going real fast into the store. I was absolutely dumbfounded and just stood in the walkway for a few seconds trying to make sense of that. After about 15 seconds, I decided I did not want to get chopped up and I went home. Craziest shit I've ever experienced. I'm probably just alive through some luck because he definitely thought if it was worth it when he saw me, but I still can hardly believe it happened myself. Well, considering you were at Walmart at 2 a.m., that's probably the fourth or fifth oddest thing you saw there. When I was 11, I was looking for my mom around my house but couldn't find her anywhere. As a last resort, I decided to check the unfinished part of our basement, and as I walked in, I saw her standing in the dark. I looked at her, and she looked at me but didn't say anything. Something seemed off about her standing there silently in the dark, and I had an eerie feeling, so I turned and raced up the basement stairs and straight into the kitchen, where I found my mom washing dishes by the sink. This didn't make sense because there's only one way up from the basement. The stairs I had just run up. I asked her if she was just in the basement and she said no. I kept quiet about what I saw because I didn't know how to explain I had just seen her in the basement. I was terrified of the basement the rest of my childhood and could never figure out what I saw down there. At like 6 or 7 years old, I lived in a townhouse and I had my own room. Every night this tallish black shadowy with a top hat and red-eyed figure appeared next to my door. I was scared at first, but he did nothing wrong. He only just stood there, and like a few months later I woke up at about 2ish, and he was hovering above me, like feet off the ground, as if he was the good mother kissing her child on the forehead while they slept. I screamed and my grandfather turned on the light, and I never saw him again. I live in Australia, and squirrels are pretty much unheard of, especially in suburbia. When I was pregnant with my eldest, I started hearing what I swear was a squirrel. It was only at night, and always after my husband was asleep. Every night for months, I woke my husband up to hear the damned squirrel, and he didn't hear it. We both thought I was losing it, and even spoke to my doctor about it. We eventually decided it was a pregnancy thing, and would go away once I gave birth. Less than a week before I was due to give birth, I was sitting on our bed, looking out the window, waiting to catch a glimpse of this bloody squirrel. By this point, I was exhausted, hormonal, and scared I was losing it. Husband woke up, asked me why I'm still awake. I start crying, and then he hears it, the damned squirrel. We look out the window, and there's a literal squirrel sitting in our garden looking at us. I swear it grinned and ran away. Never heard or saw that bastard again, and no one believes us. Heard a crash outside in the dead of night and looked out the window to see a big chromed up white pickup smashed corners onto a big blacked out black pickup. Out of the white truck comes a black guy in a white cowboy hat, and out of the black truck comes a white guy in a black cowboy hat, and they just stare each other down. Not a single other car on the road. You may have stumbled upon some type of backyard wrestling side story, or really a terrible movie from the 90s, but still cool nonetheless. I swear I captured a rainbow falling on my grandma's head, photographically. This was before digital ketos, the early 90s, got the film developed. Others saw it through it was a trick shot. I can't explain it. I took it with my dad's super cool Canon from the 70s. Can't find that photo, but wish I could. My grandma's gone now, and it was a special moment. I can still see the photo. Her smiling, looking for eggs my younger brother couldn't find, in a pink sweatsuit with roses and a pretty rainbow falling on her. It was super cool. I was on the Queen Mary on this ghost tour. My little brother was tapping, playing the drums with his fingers on the rails in the boiler room bottom of the boat. We were told that the ghost down there doesn't like noises like that. My little brother said his back hurt, so I lifted his shirt to see if it was his sunburn from earlier that day. I swear he had 3 deep scratches down his back. I took a photo of it on my phone to show my mom. For some reason, my phone restarted, so no photo. So I lifted up my brother's shirt to show the scratches. They were gone. This was in 2019, and my brother and I still have the argument with my parents whether or not it was real. When I was 15, I had a small room me and my stepdad built in the garage. The windows faced out into the garage, so even during the day, if the lights were off, it was pretty dark in my room. I go to take a nap one day after school, and while I'm laying there, I hear my door open, then close. I look around the room and can't see much because it's somewhat dark, but can hear breathing. All of a sudden, I'm paralyzed and can't move at all, eyes facing towards the door. The door opens again, and see my older brother standing in the door, but something is off about him. He says, "Don't worry, we aren't going to hurt you." I immediately start levitating up off my bed, try to scream again as hard as I can, and black out. Woke up in my bed. I don't remember falling asleep, but no, it still could have been a dream. It was just the most realistic dream I've had in my life. Haven't experienced anything like it since. Still gives me chills every time I think about it. Once when I was around 9 years old, it was around 4 a.m. Just woke up and headed for the bathroom, finished up and was walking to the kitchen pour some water, the late night thirsty hours. As I was walking, I look at my door and just see a dude trying to open the door. When he saw me, he ran, but I vividly remember seeing him running away. 9-year-old me was freaking terrified. Ran to my room and stayed up all freaking night. Gonna be the most typing I've done in a while, but I swear to God there was some sort of scorpion spider hybrid in my basement once. It looked like a spider, but with like scorpion claws and a sharp abdomen. I looked up an exact description of it, and I didn't see anything that looked close to it on the internet. When I went back down there to take a picture of it, I couldn't find it no matter what. I lifted boxes, opened doors, moved furniture, literally nothing. I don't want to know if that thing escaped or died in my basement. In the summer of 2001, I saw an incredibly bright basketball-sized orb doing figure eights about 50 feet above the I-8 in the middle of the Arizona desert at 1 a.m. There was a meteor shower that night, but there were clouds near the coast, so my 2 friends and I decided to just head east until we got out from underneath them. We could see it from miles away. Watched it just do figure eights for several minutes as we drove up to it. The instant we drove underneath it, disappeared. 2009, Santa Cruz, California. 2 separate instances, I watched a UFO dance around the sky for 15 or so minutes. The first time I watched it rip off to the horizon at what had to be thousands of miles an hour with zero effort. This was way before people had drones. No, I wasn't drinking, and no, I wasn't on drugs. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It wasn't a laser pointer. I know what I saw was many thousands of feet up in the sky, but it was doing movements that neither a plane nor a helicopter could do. Not a week goes by, I don't think about it, and I pray I can see it again in my lifetime. The weirdest thing is, I didn't really tell people for years, and then on a podcast I heard somebody describe exactly what I had seen. Story time. One time when I was a kid, I went to my grandparents' house for a family reunion, which would take a whole month. Trust me, I don't even know why, but oh well, back to the story. I would usually be in the garden, and in the garden there was a forest, and I would usually see light there, but my neighbors told me maybe someone lived there, and since then I didn't bother going there until one night I had a few friends who lived near my grandparents' house. I usually would play with them, but this one night we decided to play in the garden and chat while my friends were chatting. I saw a pretty lady who was white-skinned with silky black hair, and she was wearing a traditional Filipino dress. Roadside to those who don't know, I don't. But when I look at her lower half, she just was floating since the feet weren't on the ground. I could see that due to the moonlight, and she then smiled. She looked nice at first, but then her face goes distorted, and her neck starts to bend, and may I remind you, I was near the forest while my friends were a bit more far away from me. She started to run towards me, and I ran in tears once I reached to my friends. I told them everything, but they didn't see anything, and I even told it to my family the next day, but they told me I was imagining things. I know I wasn't imagining things. This sounds like another urban legend story, but I swear I know I saw her. That was some really crazy ass shit, honestly. About 15 years ago, I saw a massive brown-white winged creature with a wingspan that must have been 15 feet or more swoop down through my parents' backyard and back into the sky. No trace of anything, never saw it again. The odd part was, I was standing at the window and just happened to be looking exactly where it swooped. My parents live in a downtown area in northern Midwest. The backyard is a square fenced area. My first thought was a griffin because it was so big, but I knew those are mythical and not real. Still no idea what it was, but I brought the cat inside. Smart. Me and my friend both went to our local park when we were about 10 to 12. We were just chilling out like anyone would when we noticed three men stop in their path, look at each other, and walk opposite directions. We didn't think anything of it and carried on chatting. Then another man came out of nowhere and walked to one of the exits. There are 4 exits at the park for you to leave from. He just stood there, not doing anything at all. Then 2 of the men from before also blocked 2 of the exits, while the other guy went back to his car and just sat there. Me and my friend were scared beyond anything. We instantly got up and ran for the only exit. When we made it out, the men just kind of looked at us with no expression. We ran for it until we released about another 5 other men were standing at the end of the field the park was on. So we ran the only way we could towards the car park. The man in the car got out and asked us for directions. We said, "We don't know where that is, sorry," and carried on running. We entered a churchyard just opposite. I went round to the back and my friend went round the front. What I saw shocked me. All 8 of the men back at the park, and a tall cloaked woman standing in front of a grave chanting some random words. They had crystals in their hands and a red ribbon around their leg. I didn't know what to do, so I called my friend and explained what I'm watching. Then all of them at once looked up at me and started sprinting towards me, and I just ran. I've told so many people about this, but nobody believed me, only my friend who was there. Because I have no proof, I couldn't call the police or anything. Possible child traffickers sounds a little too suspicious to just be a coincidence, so glad you guys made it out okay. My old house was very, how do I put it, rundown. There were holes in the walls and there were rats everywhere, but we had no better place to go, and I had an intense fear of the dark and still do. While walking to the bathroom in a dark hallway, I swear I saw a figure with some type of knife it had held up to its face. What made it worse is the fact that I had this strong feeling that I needed to run. It could have just been my wild imagination and my intense fear of the dark that caused my brain to figment a being in the darkness, but it terrified me, and it took me a few minutes to actually get to the bottom. When I was about 3, my mom worked very late nights for a hospital. We lived with my great-grandma along with other people in my family. My mom used to come home late at night and would usually bring some sort of snack from the hospital cafeteria like donuts or jello. One night I woke up in the middle of the night. We used to sleep on the floor on a mattress pad, so I crawled because it was too dark to see anything. I crawled up to the room door and used it to get on my feet walking. Looking for my mom in this dark house, I decided to use the restroom first. That's when the sight of horrors hit me. The image is still fuzzy in my brain, but I am certain the bathroom was covered from floor to walls in lizards. My mom later on in life told me my great-grandma practiced dark magic, and that might be the source of anything weird I may have seen in that house. I was maybe 10 years old at the time. I lived next to a canal or lake. It is where people of my neighborhood go ice skating in the winter or swimming in the summer. I was fishing with my father. I remember my father had made some sort of food that attracted the fish, don't know the English word, and we used it to catch more and more fish. I could basically throw it almost as far as the width of the canal. It's quite long but not very wide. So after a while I throw a piece of it away again. Then a couple seconds later, a huge, like small dolphin fish jumps out of the water at the place where I threw the food. It was blue and had a fin on top of its back. As far as we knew, the largest fish that swims here are pikes. My father didn't see anything and says it's impossible, but I definitely remember seeing a huge fish jump out of the water.